Is Carney in a crisis? Stephen Guilbeault, his Minister of Culture, just resigned from cabinet. There's talk that more MPs are considering their positions. Carney has probably just alienated Quebec and British Columbia. Quebec is important here because that is a key stronghold that has kept the Liberals in power for the last 10 years. They hate pipelines, apparently. With this energy deal with Alberta, Carney has surely made an enemy of Quebec. British Columbia is unhappy that they were left out of the discussions. First Nations are preparing to oppose any pipeline to the BC coast. Carney is upsetting people everywhere, apart from Alberta at the moment. I never could have imagined that this would happen, but here we are. Let's talk about this MOU that has everybody upset. I've got it right here. There are a few questions to address from the jump. Does it mean a pipeline will get built? Absolutely not. Here's how I interpret this. I think Carney probably knows that this project may never get to a bitumen pipeline going to the BC coast. It stipulates in the MOU that there must be a private sector proponent for the pipeline to go ahead. And Carney has confirmed that today in his press conference afterwards. By July 1st, 2026, we will find out if Alberta can submit its pipeline application to the Major Projects Office. All this MOU says is simply that the federal government will not stand in the way if Alberta can do all the work to get all the affected parties to sign on. So Alberta is going to do all the legwork, and the federal government is essentially committing to not stand in the way, whatever that means. I think we all kind of know at this point that the only way Alberta will get another diluted bitumen pipeline through is if the federal government forces the issue. Carney has said he won't do that, so we're exactly where we started on pipelines. That's not to say nothing has changed for Alberta. Here is Danielle Smith describing some of the big wins for Alberta in this MOU.
Do you feel like Alberta is a winner in these negotiations?
Well, I can tell you I had a pretty happy caucus when we talked about it yesterday. So I would say that we put on the table what it is that we wanted to achieve. And I talked about the nine bad laws. And let me just go through them so that you know why it is we're feeling like this is a win for Alberta. First of all, one of the things I wanted was no export taxes or restrictions on Alberta oil and gas. Well, we got that. A complete redo of C69. Well, not only are we going to get that through the Major Projects Office, but we have an agreement that intra-provincial projects are going to be approved by us. And there's going to be a rewrite of that bill. Emissions cap, gone. Carbon pricing stays provincial. We've got that. The clean electricity regulation scrap, we got that. Tanker ban carve-out, we got that. The censorship of energy, we got that. That's 7 out of 9. That's not so bad. We're gonna win them in court on the declaration of plastics as toxic. We already won round 1, so we're gonna keep on going so that we win that one too. And they have realized that their net zero cars are not going to work. They've already done a 1-year reprieve on that, and I suspect that's going to also have to be significantly modified or gone. So as you can see, these are the things I put on the table and have for years. And we finally have a partner in Ottawa that has recognized that the policies are unworkable, impractical, damaging to Canada, damaging to Alberta. And I think this agreement is the first step in being able to correct 10 bad laws, or 9 bad laws over 10, I think, years where our economy was depressed. And it allows for us to make sure that we don't have a repeat over the next 10 years.
Okay, so Danielle Smith has previously discussed the 9 bad laws she describes as hindering Alberta's prosperity. In this MOU, we're finding that the oil and gas emissions cap is now gone. Danielle Smith has also criticized Bill C69, the so-called No New Pipelines law. This MOU potentially elevates an Alberta proposed bitumen pipeline to a project of national interest. So if a private proponent does come forward, the federal government has committed to streamlining regulatory approval, so make it faster for such a project to get approval. The MOU also suspends the clean electricity regulations in Alberta pending a new carbon pricing agreement. Danielle Smith views all these as a win. There will also be an expansion of the Trans Mountain pipeline for an additional 300,000 to 400,000 barrels per day, destined for Asian markets. Justin Trudeau, who built this pipeline, must be grinning from ear to ear right now. I'm sure he is probably still thinking about laying pipes these days. You would too if you were with Katy Perry. Anyways, let's get back to Carney. Look, they don't call him Sneaky Carney for nothing. I don't think a new pipeline gets built. I think he has absolutely scammed Danielle Smith here. And here's why. I'll tell you why. The emissions cap was not in effect anyways, so scrapping the emissions cap doesn't change anything today. Danielle Smith probably thinks she now has a realistic pathway to a new pipeline. I don't think she does. I don't think she does. She will not convince coastal First Nations to agree to this pipeline, right? And Makani has said he won't force the pipeline through. So she's not getting a new pipeline. In fact, I think this MOU is the equivalent of putting your overactive child on a treadmill so they can burn themselves out before bed. What Danielle Smith is getting is exactly what people have said all along. Maximize the capacity of the Trans Mountain Pipeline first. This deal gives her that. So I think she has been scammed. Check this. Carney actually got a conservative government in Alberta to increase the carbon tax on their citizens, and he didn't even have to do it himself. The carbon price in Alberta was frozen at $95 per ton by Danielle Smith's government sometime earlier this year. She has committed to increase the carbon tax to $130 per ton by April 2026. That's a 25% increase. Carney also got Danielle Smith to commit to reducing methane emissions to 75% of 2014 levels by 2035. So essentially, Carney has not really committed to anything that wasn't going to happen before. This was all a show. This was all a show. But what is real is that Carney seems to be interested in LNG, critical minerals, and infrastructure projects. That seems to be Carney's core strategy today. What we also learned today is that Stephen Guilbeault is resigning from cabinet. That's not unexpected, if I'm being honest. I respect Stephen Guilbeault for sticking to his values. There were already rumors that Guilbeault wasn't loving the new direction of the Liberal Party under Carney. There were also rumors Carney was planning a cabinet reshuffle. Presumably, Stephen Guilbeault would have been one of those to be shuffled out of cabinet. But anyways, so, I full respect to Stephen Guilbeault for sticking to his values. Where this could potentially become a crisis for Carney is in the confidence votes going forward. That's potentially one less supporter in his caucus. Maybe more will step forward in the next few days. Pierre Poilievre is probably rubbing his hands right now, wondering how he got so lucky. I will say this. There is one problem for Pierre Poilievre going forward. Carney might be making a play at stealing more of Pierre Poilievre's base. Because think about it. If you had to choose between a red Tory and a blue Tory today, who would you pick? I think most people recognize that today, Canada needs more conservative style leadership. Carney is playing in that space now. If the policies are similar, as they're turning out to be more and more these days, Carney's people are probably looking at the polls and they fancy a fight against Pierre Poilievre. The polls show that Carney is almost 2 times more favored as prime minister compared to Pierre Poilievre. Look, Canadians are on the side of jobs and affordable food right now. Emission is not top of mind right now. It's just, you gotta eat, right? I think that is what Carney is betting on. If he's betting wrong, if he's wrong about this bet, he has surely nuked the Liberals' chances in Quebec and British Columbia with this energy deal with Alberta. In fact, he has created an interesting opportunity for the NDP. If only the NDP was a serious party in 2025, right? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time. Take care, you guys.